3 weeks ago, I started remaking an old game of mine called Desolite Tanks, which was a game greatly inspired by Battle City, one of Namco's earlier games. And this video is the third episode in the series where I document my progress of remaking the game with better code and gameplay from scratch in Unity. Carrying on from the previous video, this week I added entity behaviors and player respawning, but apart from the development, I'd also like to talk about a bit on how some indie game devs, both experienced and beginner, begin to fall off and eventually stop adding content to their games, and hopefully you get to avoid these mistakes too. Let's begin with the devlog. If you didn't already know, state machines or finite state machines are a type of programming architecture that allows dynamic flow of states depending on the previous state or user input. You would typically find these game states in like a game manager or decision-making scripts like I've done here for my enemies. The general gist of mono-behavior state machines that I made for this enemy is like this. A base state will have three functions: enter state, update state, and exit state. In the state machine itself, a reference to the current state is held, and the update method of the state machine will call update state on the reference of the current state. The state machine will have a function called switch state, taking in the parameter of the new state to switch to. Since mono behaviors cannot be constructed, we simply expose this said next state in the inspector. This is where the power of exposing variables in the inspector shows, as we can then put any state that inherits from base state here. The exposed state is then passed into the switch state method as an argument, and the state machine will then call exit state method on the current state. It will then switch the reference to the current state to the new state and then call enter state on the newly set state. This way, states can be stitched together and reused while keeping logic separate and clean. Next, player respawning. I've taken a slightly different approach to player respawning and it worked really well. Please do give this a try in your own games. Since I've set up quite a few events, including the one I've mentioned in the previous video called I listens to entity death, I thought to myself, why not keep the logic separated and instead have a script listen to that event, check for the entity ID, if it matches, pull it again from the object pooling manager. And boy did it work. A lot better than I thought. Since my entities all have an ID, which has a structure I'm sticking to by the way. For reference, it's the first word in the ID represents what kind of entity they are. So tanks have the word tank and coins have the word item, because I'll be having more item drops in the future. The following part of the ID contains the subtype. So normal represents grey tanks and blue represents the cyan tanks. And of course, player represents the player. I have this set to player, but if I change this to tank, well, due to the nature of the event, now all tanks can respawn, which would make such a cool concept of a special ability for a boss, like a necromancer boss that has the ability to make all tanks respawnable. Similarly, if I changed this to normal or blue, those tanks can respawn respectively. But for now, I'll keep it as player, because having bosses and special abilities are far into the future. I say this because I want to pace myself and make sure that I am not eagerly waiting to add bombastic features to my game. This is something I believe most indie game developers suffer from. When I get asked the question, is game development fun? Well, to that I say yes. I love making games and I spend a lot of time playing them, far more than my father would like me to. The question that follows after that leaves most thinking. Why is game development fun to you? To that I answer, well, I am more of an introverted person. I shiver and tremble when the spotlight is shined on me, and I get tired really quickly when talking to someone for long periods of time. But I am still a joker by heart, and I love to make jokes and bring smiles upon people's faces. This contradictory behavior of wanting to be the joker of the group while being kept to myself is why game development suits me. Games give you the flexibility to make anything you want, so long as you have the technical abilities to do so. Which means I still get to give content, experience, and emotion to people. Perhaps even globally this time, all while sitting behind my computer, kept to myself. This alignment of who I am with what I am doing strangely corresponds with the people I know around me too. And perhaps if you gave it some thought about the people you truly know, maybe you'll have a better time understanding as to who they are as a person. When I see the lines of code that I wrote work, that feels great. When I see people creating these cool mechanics on Reddit, that's mind-blowing. And when I see the games that people have been putting in so much time and work finally finished and released, that is one of the greatest achievements accomplished. So remember why you started your projects. And if you've decided to dedicate some time to finish it, then finish it. Because I would rather see you complete that game and be mind blown by how much time you've put in over and over again than see you get regret and posting about why you'd be stopping your game. So go, finish that project and relieve your future self of the feelings of regret.